Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I am your host, Eric Smith, and today I am talking about He Who Types Between the Rows 2 Horror Drive-In Will Never Die by Mark Sieber? Saber? Not sure how to pronounce his name. This is from Cemetery Dance, and this is the follow-up to He Who Types Between the Rows, and Mark Sieber, I think, is the creator of the Horror Drive-In website, and this is a collection of his essays, his book reviews, movie reviews, some eulogies, some think pieces, and I read the first book, think I reviewed it, and so I was actually pretty excited when I saw that there was a second one, and this covers, I'm going to take a quick look at the table of contents because it will tell me. This covers from March 26th, 2006, all the way to November 1st, 2020. So 158 essays, writings, whatever you want to call it. And as I said, you've got book reviews, you've got movie reviews, old books, old movies, new books, new movies, just some musings on authors. There's a few essays, I'm just going to keep calling them that, where he, like for Tom Piccirilli, where he wrote this essay because he had found out that Tom Piccirilli was very, very ill. And so there are notes at the beginnings of some of these where it will say something, unfortunately, Tom passed on this date. So obviously, between the time that he wrote the initial essay and the time this book came out, was being put together, Tom Piccirilli had passed. There are a few things like that. There are a few other like reviews that have little notes that where he'll say, I rewatched the movie and it's not as bad as I thought, or something like that. Or one in particular where he says, like in the review, he's talking about sexism, racism, that kind of thing, and says, thank goodness things are getting better, something like that. And then so there's a little note before that particular essay or review where he's like, I said this, what the hell was I thinking? It's not getting better. So that's what you have in here. And just to give you a sampling, I'll just take a quick look. Let's take a couple from each page of the table of contents. And this isn't all horror. Most of it is horror, but, because the first thing I looked at here, the Brady Bunch movie. So he reviews that. We'll jump down here. Skip Inspector's The Bridge. Next page, Defenders of the Faith by Chet Williamson, and Nosferatu by Joe Hill. Then there's one, Happy Birthday, Roddy McDowall. So that's obviously one that has, I think Roddy McDowall has passed. And then we have The Return of Deep Red Magazine. Jump to the next page, Tomorrow's Journal by Dominic Cancilla. Paul Bartel, The Life and Films by Stephen B. Armstrong. Next page, No Exit by Tyler Adams. If It Bleeds by Stephen King. Last page of the table of contents, Happy Birthday Rick Sieber, however you say his name. R.I.P. Eddie Van Halen. Again, I just picking them at random, so gives you an idea. Very vague idea of what he's doing here. So, I gave this 4 out of 5 on Goodreads. I'm going to say that right off the bat. I will also tell you, I've already ordered 2 of the books that he talks about in here. They're on the shelf right over there. You can't see them, but I'm pointing directly at them. And there are others that I added to my wish list that I want to pick up. And then there's, obviously, there are books. They are books that he praised and sounded interesting to me. He prides himself on being honest, and he says that a number of times. If he doesn't like a book, he's going to tell you he doesn't like it, and he's going to tell you why. And so I find this sort of thing interesting. I like reading collections of reviews. I have two books by Roger Ebert. I hate this movie, and I forget what the second one is called, but it's essentially they're collections of his negative reviews. Excuse me, I find those entertaining. And so I find this entertaining as well. And the Roger Ebert books, obviously, I'm reading those to be entertained and to see if he hates any movies that I actually like. There's a bit of that because he's covering stuff that I have read or that I have seen. And so, it's nice to see if we agree or disagree, and we don't always agree. But I also get to find out about books I hadn't heard of or wasn't aware enough of. Maybe I'd heard of them but didn't really know anything. Same with movies. And it's also nice to read these tributes to people, these different things. So I did give it 4 out of 5. I really enjoy that. Now, I did get the feeling, and this is just me, I don't think it should affect whether or not you're interested in this book. I got the feeling that I'm just going to go with Sieber. I don't know. He does feel at times to be a bit of a horror snob. But it only seems to be, or mainly seems to be, with books as opposed to movies. With movies, when he's talking about different movies, he'll praise some low-budget schlocky movie, it seems, just as often as he praises the whether it's elevated horror or at least the bigger budget horror. Whereas with books, he really seems down on, for lack of a better term, pulp horror. He praises the literary horror a lot, but does not seem to like, with some exceptions, cheesier horror, again, pulpish horror. This is the impression I got. Now, on the one hand, I can understand a little bit because with movies, you're spending an hour and a half, 2 hours, nowadays up to 3 hours, watching the movie as opposed to the much greater length of time it takes to write a book. And so you can be a little more generous with a movie because you haven't invested as much time as you do with a book. And if you waste an hour and a half watching a movie, but you were entertained, it was a bad movie, you were entertained. I just talked about this a couple of videos ago. But you were entertained, you cut some slack. Because again, it was an hour and a half of your life. Whereas if you spent hours and hours and hours and hours, or depending on the size of the book and how much time you have, days invested in a book, and it does not meet your standards, I guess, it's harder to cut it some slack. For some people, I like cheese. But I love the Rewind or Die series. Very B-movie, 80s feeling to all of these books. And I don't know that Mark Sieber would like those. I can't say, he doesn't review any of them, but I'm not sure that's his cup of tea. And he does knock blockbuster films, superhero films. So even when it comes to movies, he just sometimes feels a little snobbish, pretentious. I'm not sure the best way to describe it. And that's not a knock on him. He can be that way. We do agree. I'm not a huge fan of CGI in horror movies. If it's well done and if it's subtle, it can work. I like a more gritty, realistic look. The problem I have with a lot of CGI in horror movies is it doesn't quite fit, and it takes me out of the reality of the movie, if that makes sense. I think it works in monster movies, King Kong versus Godzilla. That works. It works in superhero movies, that kind of. I don't know. There's just something about horror. It doesn't work for me most of the time. It works best if you don't even notice it. So we do agree on that. But and I do think it's fine not to like a certain type of thing. I'm not a big fan of romantic comedies. But there's a difference between saying, I'm not a fan of romantic comedies, and saying, ugh, shitty romantic comedies. The theaters are filled with this romantic comedy crap. And he does, not literally, but does say that sort of thing when it comes to like superhero movies. I'm a fan of a well-made superhero movie. I like the Marvel movies. I can rank them. There are some duds. But I like many more than I dislike. DC movies, that's a whole other ballgame. But so saying superhero movies aren't my thing, not a fan, don't like it, fine. But to put them down as an entire genre and say essentially blockbusters are crap, superhero movies are crap, I had this feeling of angry old man syndrome. You kids get off my lawn syndrome. There's a lot of nostalgia in here, which is fine. Regular viewers, especially anybody who's watched my comics poll list, knows I've been purchasing collections, comic book collections, collected editions of the the comics I grew up reading, so that I can reread those. I loved that stuff. And I've been buying, I buy used books. I buy books from when I was a kid. Some that I read back when I was a kid and enjoyed and want to have. Some that I didn't read, missed out on. There's nothing wrong with that, but more than once, it's the old, for him in this book, it seems the old stuff is better than the new stuff. He keeps lamenting the death of VHS. He keeps talking about, oh, I miss video stores. I miss VHS. Discs just aren't the same. He hates digital books. There's only one thing in here that he read on digital. He had a reason for it. I don't remember why. But he, more than once again, he mentions how he cannot stand digital books. Now, anybody who has seen some of the videos I've made showing my shelves, yeah, I have thousands of physical copies of books. I also have a Kindle. My problem is I always forget that I have digital books. Because I'm staring at all of the physical books that I have, and I just tend to forget that when I have things on digital. But I've got nothing against it. I know that's best for some people, and I'm more than happy when there's free stuff on Amazon, free digital books, to find something that looks good and get it. And I've read stuff on there, but he really, really can't stand digital stuff. So there's some of the impressions of the man. I don't know him. He's absolutely a cheerleader for horror. Could be a wonderful person. These are just the impressions I got from reading the things in He Who Types Between the Rows 2, Horror Drive-In Will Never Die. But I did give it 4 out of 5. I recommend it if you like this sort of thing. If you want to read reviews, if you want to read a little touchstones of horror history, I highly recommend this. If another one comes out, I'll pick that up. I've enjoyed them. And as I said, I've already gotten a couple of books that he talked about, and I've put more on my wish list. So, yeah, I recommend He Who Types Between the Rows 2, Horror Drive-In Will Never Die, by Mark Sieber. I apologize if that's not how you pronounce his name. Cemetery Dance. Yeah, check it out. My question for this video is, do you like reading reviews? Collections of reviews. Obviously, if you're watching this, you're interested in book reviews. But how do you feel about collections of reviews? Obviously, again, I enjoy them. I've got both of these books. I mentioned the 2 Roger Ebert books that I have, and there's more in that series. There are other Roger Ebert books about movies he hated, and I want to pick those up and read them as well. I really wish I had Joe Bob Briggs' The Last Drive-In, the 2 books of drive-in movie reviews that he had. I read those columns in the paper every week, and they were collected, but they're out of print. They are expensive to find in decent condition, as far as I've been able to tell. I really wish they would come out in new editions. They were so entertaining. But do you enjoy that sort of thing? Or is it just something, do you like a quick video or review you stumble across? Or do you have an interest in these collections of reviews and things like that? Let me know down in the comments. And if you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post spoiler warning. We try to be polite here on the Low Budget Review Show. Please like, share, and subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. Pardon me. If you'd care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is @Ronan5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, fuzzy animals, is EricSmith5757. That's Eric with a K, ERIKSMITH 5757. That's all I've got for you. This has been the Low Budget Review Show. I have been Eric Smith. And until next time, read more books.